but we will not allow our generosity to be abused by those who would break our laws, defy our rules, violate our borders, break into our country illegally. When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists.
I'm here today to announce that the program known as DACA that was effectuated under the Obama administration is being rescinded.
And it's very possible that DACA won't happen, and it's not because of the Republicans, it's because of the Democrats.
In 2012, the Obama administration created the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, known as DACA. The program allows young adults who came to the U.S. illegally as children to apply for a renewable 2-year visa, allowing them to work legally and be safe from deportation. Itziri Lopez Santiago was kind enough to share her story with us.
So we had heard that the government was going to make a program for students who wanted a higher education and weren't able to because of their status, and then became DACA. We were one of the first 100 people that actually applied for the DACA when it came in effect. So when that happened, we waited. We got a little. We make a joke about it because it was a little green card, and we said, "Oh, look, we got our green card." But it was just a card with a date and a location to get your fingerprints done. So because we will be working, they want our fingerprints to make sure that we haven't had any like federal things done or criminal records. So after we went to get our fingerprints done, we waited, I believe it was 2 months before we got our official employment card. After the employment card, we started working, and I was actually already 16 at the time. So I had applied once I got my card and I got the job. And the same thing goes for my two older brothers who did the same thing. You need your passports, taxes, you also need school records. So when you first applied, you needed the school records to have proof that you've been in the US since you were I believe it was like 12 was the age that they required students to be for the DACA program. So we had to have proof of all of that we've been in the US for longer than the 7 years, which we were at that time. And then so the process is from getting it approved and then waiting to get that confirmation card to get your fingerprints done, and then after that you get your DACA card. You do this every 2 years, 6 months before your card expires, because it's usually a 6-month period where the process takes place.
A large majority of DACA applicants come from Mexico, which is why President Trump made Mexican immigrants and other countries from Central and Southern America a huge area of focus, where he was campaigning heavily against our current immigration policies at the time. One woman who fights for the citizenship and rights of immigrants and their families is immigration attorney Audrey Allen. She handles both business and family immigration cases.
My name is Audrey Allen, and I'm an immigration attorney. I have a small practice in Conshohocken, Pennsylvania. So I majored in communications and Spanish, and I was trying to kind of find a way to marry my interest in language and international studies with the law. So I actually did an interpretation certification my last year of college and wound up with an internship at an immigration firm, and really decided that that was something that I could really put my heart and soul into. So I decided to go to law school, and then I have been working in the field of immigration since I graduated in 2004. So it's interesting because most attorneys don't even know another immigration attorney. It's a very niche area of law, but underneath the umbrella of immigration, there's so many different facets. So my focus is primarily on family or individual immigration, so that still has a lot of different types of cases: asylum, victims of domestic violence, and then I do some corporate work as well, but primarily Spanish-speaking family cases. I have a lot of stories that can bring tears to my eyes, but I do find a lot of joy in working with young people who have been successful in getting DACA and really having so many doors open to them. When you are undocumented, it's a tough life, always looking over your shoulder, not having access to a lot of things: education, employment, just basic human rights that most people in the United States take for granted. So I do a lot of pro bono work for patients and families of St. Christopher's Hospital for Children, and I do have one family in particular. There's 3 sisters and 1 brother, and 2 of the sisters have been able to get DACA, and then were able to, because of having that DACA status, apply for a permission to travel document. And when they traveled on that and came back into the United States legally, that allowed them to then have access to apply for their green card if they had an underlying way to do that, like through marriage to a U.S. citizen. So this is kind of over the course of 8 years, this story that I just told in a couple sentences, but I have the one person's green card based on her marriage to a U.S. citizen coming up, so it was very rewarding to see her. She has a great career now, she has a great life, and was really amazing to see so many doors open to her because of the DACA program. And I think particularly my heart just goes out to young people who are really punished for things that, these sins that have not been committed by them, but, they had no part in the decision of their parents bringing them here as children. And I think it's really cruel to end a program that has given education and employment opportunities to really deserving young people who, really are only looking to fulfill the American dream.
So I do believe that the kind of requirements to get a renewal will be a lot more difficult. As of right now, the process is if you already have your DACA card, you automatically get a renewal unless you've done something that's gotten you arrested or any of that that affects the government. So I do believe it will change because of the new, depending on the new presidency and how strict they put on, what restrictions they put on the renewal process, because I feel like they'll probably want to have more proof that what exactly you're doing, like what kind of jobs you're doing, what are you studying kind of thing, because I feel like the government wants this program to not just help kids and DACA recipients, but also to help the government as a whole. So those who are going to be more in like the medical field and like the engineering that like have more advances, then those are the people they're going to kind of like direct their focus on to get renewed for their DACA status. So I believe that DACA is still important, even though it doesn't guarantee you a pathway to citizenship, because it does, like I said, give you a secure feeling of I am doing something good for the government, even though this is the only place I know. Same thing going, you get to finish your education. I know a lot of students who didn't qualify for the DACA program and believe they can't go off to college because they don't have status, which isn't entirely true. There are still other schools who accept students regardless of their status, but it gives students more opportunities that most students don't get, especially with work-wise, because you have to, most places you have to have a social security number to even work, unless you do under the table, which obviously is illegal. But it gives students a lot more opportunities having this little status even though it may not lead to a whole citizenship.
And I'm meeting with someone, it's very heart-wrenching when I have someone who missed coming in, you know, by a couple months, because you have to show that they were here before their 16th birthday. And also some people were, but they just don't have official documentation of that. For example, if they came over in the summer and they couldn't enroll in school, they're kind of locked in this purgatory and they have no way to prove that they were here. So those cases are tough when you can't apply. But this person that I was just speaking to was just telling me that a lot of immigrants fight so hard and, you know, don't really take anything for granted and have gone through so much to get here and worked so much harder than a lot of Americans.
Oh, definitely.
Just to you know, be able to be here and to have a minimum wage paying job and be grateful to be in this country. And that's why I really, truly love what I do. It reminds me of how fortunate we are to be in this country, even though so many people are so down on America these days. To hear the stories of what people go through to come here and to be able to have the opportunity to find the American dream is why I really like the practice of immigration law.
Thank you. Do you feel that it could be like it'll be harder in the next few years for immigrants to get DACA renewals? What's your opinion on that? Do you think renewals are not going to be as easy to get?
Across the board, every application being filed with United States Citizenship and Immigration Services is getting more scrutiny. So the thing that's tough with DACA is applications can be denied discretionarily. So basically, you can get a decision and it just says we are exercising discretion and not granting this application, and there's no appeals process. So it does kind of create this conundrum for applicants. So I would not be surprised if more denials are coming in really without a reason, since it doesn't have to be, you know, a legally stated reason in the denial like most other applications, because there's no appeals process. Yeah, I just had a really cool case, actually. It was a heartbreaking case. I had a gay couple, men, and we went in for their marriage interview, and he had an expedited order of deportation at the border and didn't know about it. Like, a lot of times it's only for Mexicans. They actually get deported at the border, but they're not really processed. Like, you don't see a judge. You wouldn't know the difference between, they say catch and release is kind of when they fingerprint you and let you go. Yeah. Versus expedited order, for you would have no idea if you were deported versus catch and release. Yeah. But if you have this order, you can't get your green card. So ICE came and picked him up at his interview, which was horrific. I've never had that happen to me in 14 years of doing this. And then I had to go back and tell his husband that, you know, ICE had come and taken him, and his husband was crying. It was pretty intense. So he filed for asylum as a protected class as a gay man from Mexico. And then we couldn't get him bond because he had this prior order and was not eligible for it. And then a case came down in the Third Circuit saying people that were detained for more than 6 months had the right to a bond hearing. So we finally had a bond hearing last week, and we got him bond. So he's out and home with his husband now, which is great. But, yeah, it's pretty heart-wrenching, some of this stuff. Well, I was just asking because I didn't know if you wanted an internship or what you're doing next semester. But if you want to learn more about immigration law, you can definitely come back or...
Okay. Thank you. It's good you told me you have good, well balance there between a success story and you have some struggles. Like, It's perfect you're opening up about this, because this is exactly, you know, the uphill thing that when I'm narrating this, when I put this all together.
Very tough to do my job the last 2 years, and thank God Jeff Sessions was ousted yesterday. But he, as Attorney General, referred himself a bunch of immigration cases and really upended, particularly asylum law. He referred himself a case that reversed this finding that said that domestic violence victims were a protected social group, and he said that they're not. So now all of these cases that we were in line to get their green cards basically are now, these women don't qualify. And men sometimes too, but mostly females. So it's been really tough the last 2 years. And it's interesting because they're very intelligent, some of these people that are working in the White House, that I really do think have a very, very evil, anti-immigrant, inhumane agenda. And I don't think that's hyperbole. And without changing the law, through changing policies, for example, having people have to come in for an interview where we used to just get a decision in the mail, now they're getting picked up and deported, when they go in for their interview. So just a little thing like changing a policy about who comes in for an in-person interview can really change in practice this area of law. So it's been a pretty dark time the last 2 years to try and work with immigrant populations and to do my job. Yeah. And we might be in for another 6 years of it, so we'll see how things go. But yeah, it's not easy right now, that's for sure. And it's at every turn. Helena only does corporate stuff, but all of our corporate cases are really getting scrutinized. We're having so many cases denied. I had a Canadian accountant who was denied at the border for a TN visa, which was just nonsensical, just because they could. It's a very anti-immigrant mentality, and this whole Buy American, Hire American is that was a memo that was released, an executive order, and that's definitely where the priority now is, to try and keep immigrants out of this country, and it's pretty clear.
Yeah.
At every turn, professionals, undocumented. It's not just one group or one area of the world, except Eastern European models that want to marry the president. Without getting too political.
I have a question for you. What's the difference, what would some differences entail between like a corporate case and like an individual one that you do?
So that's kind of a confusing word I probably used. When you're doing corporate cases for companies, you're still working with an individual usually, but most time you're dealing with like HR from the company helping to bring over, a candidate who is on some kind of employment-based visa. So I do think a lot of that work, some of that work is more intellectually challenging, and it's kind of cool because you become an expert on what that person does to be able to describe it in layperson's terms to the person that's going to be adjudicating the visa. And then, of course, like extending it once they've gotten here or their green card. But it's a pretty long, involved process to get a work visa and also to get an employment-based green card. But that's a big umbrella as well. Like I did an NFL player a couple years ago. I've done an opera singer's visa. There's all different artists, entertainers, athletes, anyone seeking to come to the United States to work, perform, all different genres, basically. Filmmakers, everything. Everyone needs some kind of visa to come into the United States.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think got everything I needed.
All right.
Yep.
If you have follow-up questions or it doesn't mesh well when you're trying to put it together, you can call me and I can definitely...
to become a citizenship. I get that why some Congress are kind of iffy about this whole leading to citizenship. I get it. Like, it's not like I'm so against it or like I want everyone to become a citizen, because I know the restrictions. Like, I've been here so long, I understand the way that government thinks. I understand their worries. I understand like their like pretty much, yeah, their worries about everyone becoming a citizen. So that's why they're putting this like time limit of it. But within the DACA program and the DREAM Act, it shows you that these kids have already been in the program. They already know what they're doing, especially if they don't have any criminal record. If they're going to school, they're working, then I don't know what else you would want in a citizen. That's all your citizens do anyways. They go to get an education, to get a career, to work. They're not criminals, they're not harming anybody, they're not harming the environment. So letting the DACA students become into the DREAM Act to lead to a citizenship, I think personally is a better option than just letting every single person take this long journey to become a citizen, if that makes sense. So the ways that DACA has kind of secured living in the United States is I'm not as afraid as police officers. Usually when we would be walking around town or like driving around and my parents would get pulled over, we'd have this fear of, oh, they're going to take us away, like we're going to get deported. So with having this DACA status, we have, as my sister likes to say, half citizenship here. So it does keep us safe. Whether we get stopped at by a police officer, we go to the government, we are able to like fly in an airplane, which we didn't know we would be able to. But with that, it helps us, so it gives us more of a safer kind of environment. So my parents actually moved me and my 4 siblings, and at first we didn't know what the decision was until we got older, and we definitely decided to stay in the United States just because we did have more opportunities for us education-wise and career-wise as well. So we do have they do all of our taxes, and it's like this law firm that does it too. So they're like immigration lawyers, but also do like taxes. It's like a family-run thing, and they had known about it before that it got out. So they had already asked for all of our documentations beforehand, and all they needed was the government to say yes, we're going to do it, and they sent out our application, which is why we were one of the first ones that got accepted.